Like I said, we have such a great turnout today. I really want to thank all of you for making time for this. And really, the part that the Washington Media Scholars team is presenting here is going to be relatively short today. We really wanted to save this time for all of you who have at least had one go around at tackling this case, and give you a chance to ask some questions of some folks that we have on the calls. And just a reminder, the pool of scholarship money that you all are competing for is about $18,500. That breaks down to the top two teams receiving $10,000. The top team receiving $10,000. The runner-up, they will share $6,000. And then we have a Maya Guyon scholarship. That's a $2,500 scholarship. That is a special scholarship awarded to one student. So you are almost halfway through the competition at this point. And then we will be competing for those scholarships. We'll have a whole week long of activities. In fact, we're right in the middle right now of planning what that Media Scholars Week looks like and all the visits. Previous years, we visited Hulu and Google and the Washington Post and Politico and iHeartRadio. And so we really are planning a phenomenal experience for students to have in Washington when they're here, leading up to that competition day, which is the final day, Thursday, June 9th. So students will be in DC from June 5th to the 9th, and then they'll compete. You'll draw for competition order and compete on Thursday, June 9th. And then we'll all announce the winners at the awards luncheon on Thursday. So, and I know we have some advisors who are also joining us on the call today. And just in case this is your first time, you do have the ability to come and observe your students competing on the competition day. So as we move into the final round, there'll be lots more information that we share with you, but we wanted to at least give you a preview of what's ahead. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Kylie Cost, who's on the Zoom today, and she is a 2020 finalist. And so she was going to share with you just some of her lessons learned and best practices and tips that she picked up from her experience. So Kylie, you want to take it over?
Sure. Thanks. Really excited to be here, see all your lovely faces. This experience was definitely very monumental in kickstarting my career, so I'm very excited for all of you. Just a little bit of background about myself. Like Kara said, I participated in the competition in 2020 during my senior year of college. Unfortunately, it was the same time that COVID became a thing, so I was moving back home, and this really, helped guide me through that tough time and give me some hope. So it was a very a great tool there. I am now working at Purple Strategies, which is based out of DC, as a campaign coordinator. I'm on 2 client teams currently, which has been really great. And I know Purple is closely knitted with national media, so there's a great tie there. Happy to connect with any of you and talk more about that. But jumping into the competition, some advice pointers would be to really understand your target audience, to make sure you have a very clear understanding of your target audience, know them inside and out, so that you're able to create a strategic and meaningful tactic that will, be hard-hitting, strong, and, will make an impact on them. But being able to showcase that you know your audience inside and out will really come through of your presentation and your narrative as well. And another pointer I would say with that understanding is to be able to think through your plan all the way to the end and come up with possible, problem-solving scenarios where, what happens if your main tactic doesn't work out, or is not performing the way you were hoping it was going to perform, once your campaign starts to go forth. Maybe provide some backup plans in your approach too, to just show that you've thoroughly thought through your approach there. An example would be like we began to launch, and if we start to see that our tactic on social media isn't hitting benchmarks, we could reallocate dollars to XYZ. I know when I competed in the finals, a judge asked me right away, me and my partner, so what are you going to do if your main tactic fails and it's not working out? So definitely something to have on your radar. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any more questions, but those are my 2 advice points. But yeah.
I have a question for you, Kylie. What do you feel like was the most important or valuable thing that you got out of this experience in participating in the competition itself?
Yeah, a lot of things. I would say you're all in a really great position to network and really learn about this industry. You all have made it very far, and you should all be very proud. And you're in front of a community that is wanting to help you and learn from you and get to know you all. So just really using this time to build your networking skills, I think, was something that I really took out of this, and met some really great people, industry leaders. And you're gonna learn about a lot about the industry. So maybe you don't know what part of the industry you want to go into quite yet. I know I sure didn't, and I didn't know how large this industry could be and all the different tiny sectors you can work in. So really just digging into that and using your resources and reaching out as much as you can really made an impact on my experience.
And I have another question for you. I'm going to have students save their questions just to when we get to the total Q&A part, but just for your presentation, if there was something that you could have told yourself, if you could go back in time and tell yourself something as you were headed into this semifinal round, what's the biggest piece of advice you could have given yourself or your team?
That's a great question. Thinking back, my partner and I met pretty much every day and rehearsed it inside and out, which really helped. But I'd probably say to trust my instinct about the case. And, if you read it all the way through and your plan through and through, you can rehearse it and it's good to memorize it. But maybe we overdid it a little bit and we met way too much and we memorized it inside and out. I probably could still recite it today. But just trust your gut. And when it comes to, the end after your presentation, when the judges are asking you questions, is definitely take a moment, don't rush into anything. It's a nice open conversation. So just trust your gut, take your time. Yeah.
And some of the things that you touched upon in your remarks, Kylie, and thank you so much for sharing that insight, because I think it's so valuable to hear from somebody who's really gone through it before and have that experience. But some of the things that we're working on to enhance that experience when students are in Washington, D.C., in addition to meeting with industry execs and prepping for your competition, and also just exploring some of the sites and tastes that are in Washington, D.C. itself, and experiencing that history. There's business etiquette training. We let teams take over our social media channels and do takeovers and help get practice in those areas too. And we're always inspired by the creativity that comes from that. So this really is an experience that crosses so many different areas. And I think I'm fairly new in my role, but one thing that I've heard a lot from students is the exposure that you get to all these different things is really one of the most valuable aspects of this. So the case competition is obviously the most important means to get you there and to get you to have that experience, but it's such a bigger, more well-rounded experience once you are amongst those finalists. So I'm going to move on to Ben Engel now. And Ben is really a critical member of the team at National Media and also the chair of our Media Scholars Advisory Committee. And Ben has lots of great insight about the case itself. He's going to share some tips for you to consider about your semifinal round entries. And then we'll open it up after Ben's comments to questions from you. So Ben.
Thanks, Kara. Thanks, Kylie. Nice to see you. Students, professors, good to see all of you too. AJ. Thanks for participating in this competition. Having so many people participate makes us feel like we're doing something helpful and right. And this year's qualifying round was the most competitive one we've had in our 13 years, Kara?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
13-year history.
Yeah.
I've been with the program since it started as an idea back in 2009 and have watched it grow, and you represent our growth. And so we're thankful for you and congratulate you on making it this far. But it gets harder from here. Hopefully you've read the case and have recognized that. I don't want to bore you. So I want to just give you a couple pointers from what I've seen over the years. I think Kylie's advice is spot on, and it's probably better for you to hear it from someone who's competed in it than someone who's been on this side and making people do the work. But what I'll tell you is it's on the slide. I don't know, Kara, if you're sending that out or not, but
yeah, I'll just send it.
Yeah, my number one piece of advice to anybody participating in this competition is to edit your work. Edit. You can't edit too much. Because sometimes the difference between making it to the next round and not is something as simple as typos or grammatical mistakes, because the competition is fierce, for lack of a better term. And this qualifying round, we didn't see any just poor cases, which is unusual. So you guys are the best of the best here. Review the case, because the way that we typically write it is to educate you along the way. Hopefully you've been exposed to some of the terms that we use in our field, which is media planning, media research, and media buying, but cost per points, cost per thousands, ratings, reach, frequency, any of those things. If you're not sure what it is, use tools that are available to you, Google, professors, textbooks, whatever you have. Research those things so you do have a comfortable understanding of it, so that when you're writing about them or talking through them with people, you're talking about the right thing. We've put everything that you need to be successful into the case, but don't limit yourself to only using the resources we gave you. Again, lean on other people, your professors, people in the industry. We've had teams in the past who've called local ad agencies in their community, or called local media vendors, whether TV stations, newspapers, whatever it may be, and just ask questions. You'd be surprised how many people in our industry like helping students. Well, hopefully you're not surprised. That sounds like it sounds like we don't want to help. Hopefully your expectations are met by the number of people that want to help you, because one of the things I've learned about this program over the years is that people in our job like to talk to young folks interested in our job. When we're in the middle of challenging times at work, it's easy to complain and have gripes and conflicts with vendors and clients and partners. But at the end of the day, when we talk to folks like you, we like what we do. And it's fun to hear from people like you who are interested in it. So you will likely find someone who's willing to talk to you. So don't be hesitant about making that cold call or sending that email, or you're using whatever social media you use to reach out to people for advice. And the worst thing they're going to tell you is, sorry, I don't have time. That's not a bad thing to happen. Be creative. Read through the case, remember that you're competing against a couple dozen other teams that are also reading the same thing. So don't assume that your idea is unique. Look at it every different way you can. Have someone else read it. Ask a parent to read it and see what they think and see if it makes sense or not. I'll tell you this, something we haven't shared in the past. The cases that didn't make it through the qualifying round, most of them didn't make it, not because they weren't written well, but because a lot of them had the same idea. There was no originality to them, and we couldn't see how they would separate themselves from the pack when there were multiple cases that had the same media plan. So think closely. That's not to say that the obvious answer isn't a good one, but just think long and hard about what you're going to present to us. That doesn't also mean go way out in left field and come up with something completely wacky either. We don't want your media plan to be spent on all blimp advertising or something like that. But just be creative and be careful about what you're presenting and think it through. And then one of my biggest pet peeves year after year, and I've got a recent example I can share with you too, is simple labeling. If you're going to make a chart or a graph, make sure that whoever's picking it up can understand it without having to lean on any other piece of information, searching through your document to find out what it means. It should be labeled correctly with titles, keys, color coding, whatever you're using. Make sure it's clear and I can understand it without needing to do any other research. The biggest cable news company in the country, Fox News, sent out a piece last week, essentially a PR piece bragging about their current ratings and how they have more Republicans, more Democrats, and more independents watch their news than any other news in the country, which is fine. But the chart they sent didn't label how they were measuring the audience. It just had blue and red bars, and it actually labeled the red bar as Democrats and the blue bar as Republicans, which, silly. Yeah. They labeled the time periods wrong, and they didn't tell us if they were measuring ratings or impressions or what they were measuring. So while the press release headline explained what they were trying to tell us, the graphics department really dropped the ball and didn't do a good job, which I was able to use for my team here and teach them about why proper chart making is important. So those are kind of my high level best practices, and I certainly encourage you to ask any questions that you have for us going forward. Like Kylie said, you've done a great job getting this far. It's a great opportunity. You're gonna have a terrific opportunity to network with people that likely you might not have been exposed to this early in your career. So I highly encourage you to take it seriously, apply yourself, and if you do the same type of work you did in qualifying round, I think you all do well.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful advice, Ben. And this is just an excerpt straight from the case, the last page, where it gives instructions to all of you on what we're looking for you to submit in a couple weeks from now. So I wanted to just pause here for a minute. Maybe questions will start here. And if you do have a question, please do introduce yourself, your name and your teammate maybe, and the school that you're from, so that we get a little bit to know you a little bit better too. But we want to make sure that students are really clear on what it is that they need to turn in 2 weeks from now, and that they are utilizing myself and Ben in that 2 weeks if you need clarifying questions answered. And occasionally if it's something that we think the whole group would benefit from, we will share your question with the whole group of semifinalists. And the other thing, I'm going to post it in the chat here and send you a link after the call. We have done a tutorial video on our YouTube channel. If all of you go to YouTube and follow Media Scholars, you will find that content already up there. It's a 12-minute short video that tells you how to do some of these basic calculations that we're looking for you to be able to incorporate in your submissions as well. But we need a written document from you, a PDF preferably. It helps us if you save all that as a PDF that is no longer than 10 pages single spaced. And when you save that, some of the questions we've gotten in the past, if you have citations or bibliography or something like that, that does not count as the 10 pages. So we just want your content itself. and your argument to be 10 pages or less. That needs to address these bullet points here that are identified on that last page. And it also needs to include, and this can be your 11th page, a one-page elevator pitch summary. Your choice whether you write that in paragraph or bullet format. How do you speak and talk in an elevator? That's really up to you. And don't forget also to attach your media mix plan, which is labeled attachment B in the case documents. And that's your recommended allocation of the $350,000 budget. So I will now open up the floor to questions. Wow, are we done our jobs? Am I missing a hand raised? If I am, go ahead and just unmute yourself now.
Hi, I have a question.
Great.
My name's Gabby. This is Maddie. We're from Brigham Young University in Utah. We have a question regarding the description about how the art design will come later in like our presentation. So we're just wondering how if implementing like a creative design throughout our 10 pages would help or hurt, or if we should just keep it pretty simple with a single space and then just putting the graphics throughout.
Yep, I'll jump on that. So the kind of a backstory about our industry is my job is on the media side, representing the case that you're working on, where we have to identify the target audience, identify how they use media, and then decide how to spend the budget. But obviously advertising includes the creative piece. Everyone in our industry likes to think that they're creative and have great creative concepts and ideas, which isn't true, but we all like to think that. So since you guys are newer to this type of project, we want to give you that opportunity to offer any creative ideas you have if you want to, but it's not a requirement. We don't want you to focus on coming up with the creative concept because that's not the task. The task is the media plan and making a case that your media plan is going to achieve the client's goals. Now, the other piece of that is also the presentation of your media plan, which could be the design of your final product. I didn't actually write this draft, but my coworker Will, who did, he's really big on the content before the presentation. So what his intention was to make sure that you focused on your media plan and the content part before you spent too much time on the design. Mm-hmm. So the advice there is don't start with the design first and back into your media plan, because you'll probably miss the mark on what we want to see. Remember that the people that are going to be judging this round are all on the media research, planning, and placement side. Mm-hmm. So if you're coming up with high-level creative, it might be lost on those judges. But if you're coming up with very clever ways to spend the money and reach an audience, that's going to be what gets you farther in the competition. So go ahead.
If I can piggyback on that too, Ben, I think what so many of you did so well in the qualifying round is really get that blend down already. There were some really creative presentations for magazine covers and graphs and charts, things that had meat and that enhanced, but didn't overpower the data that you were trying to convey.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I'll say that if you don't want to chime in, but you want to put a question in the chat, you're more than welcome to do that too. And then one other bit of advice that I meant to give you, and Kylie referenced this a little bit, is that think about your media plan and think about how you would respond if circumstances or the environment changed. Don't be fixed to one plan as the final solution. Be flexible with your ideas, meaning that my piece of advice that I like to give to students doing this is imagine you know had $1 or $100, whatever it is, to place one ad. You had to pick one ad to place. Where would you place it and why? And then build from there. We like to joke that, you know, if you've got a $200 million budget, you don't really need to be strategic because you can buy all the ads you want. It's when you're working with the finite resources, being money, that you have to be strategic in the placement. So think of it that way and then build up instead of starting with buying everything and cutting down. So.
Great.
Hi, sorry. So I'm Claire
And I'm Ellie.
and we go to Iowa State University. So we just had a question about the media planning. And so where you have the option to put in your own like ideas for the local advertising, how do we come up with that price? So do we just look at similar markets or do we just leave the number or yeah, so that's kind of was our question.
Good question. I need to look at this. I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me, so I guess we didn't provide you with the price. I'm gonna
Yeah,
make that
I
assumption.
can.
So you can do a couple of different things. If you want to call local vendors and ask them to help give you guidance, and then you'll make sure you note that that's where you got the price. If you want to make an estimate and just provide us that information that you use an estimate. If we provided anything to you in the qualifying round that is in line with that idea, use that. It's not much different than what I would do in my current job. If a client is waiting on something from me and I haven't heard back from a vendor or seller about the price, I have to come up with a price to give the client. So I would make an assumption and let the client know, we think it's going to cost about this much, but we'll tease out the exact price in negotiations. So if we didn't provide you exactly what you need, it's okay to come up with a different metric to use or number to use. Just make sure it's clear that that's how you came up with it.
Great. Anybody else?
I have a quick question for you guys. My name is Andrew, and this is Kaylee, from Brigham Young University. Question: when we are designing and figuring out our presentation, there's a lot of information in the brief about our client, about the company that we are proposing this idea to. Would you recommend taking a lot of that, the background of their company and like how they would perceive our presentation into consideration? Or would you rather suggest that we consider, as the actual judges who are considering, from Washington Post, interpreting and digesting our presentation? What would you recommend?
So for this round, remember there's no oral presentation this round. It's just going to be your written media plan and your case. We've seen teams approach it both ways. I don't want to tell you one way is right. When we assemble our judging team, both for the semifinal round and for the final round, our goal is to bring in experts from our industry that have a wide range of experience. So there'll be digital people, there'll be radio people, there'll be print people, there'll be TV people, there'll be client side that are aware of general media planning, but might not have a specialty in any particular media type. So the answer is one solution isn't going to match any one judge. So if you want to follow the case narrative and craft it that way based on what the fictitious company says they usually do, that's fine. Or if you want to come up with your own approach, that's fine too. Just be consistent in the way you describe it so that it's clear to whoever is judging that that's what you did. And there will be different judges for this round, the semifinals, and then the finals too. So it won't be the same group of people.
Gotcha. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm gonna hop in here and ask a quick question. I'm Mia. My partner is Shiv. We're from Temple University. I wanted to ask, in terms of if we come up with our media mix and maybe we left some media platforms or outlets out of it, do you prefer that we put reasoning as to why we didn't include those in our mix, or for this submission, you think maybe just like leave it out and stick strong with the plan that we do come up with?
It's completely up to you how you want to approach that. And kind of going back to the last question, if there's a judge that spends all of their time doing digital advertising and you leave digital advertising out and don't explain it, they'll probably score you accordingly. Same for any media. Some judges will overlook it. Some will take offense that you didn't include their media category in there. So think of it that way. I hesitate to give you directional advice because I fear that everyone will follow that advice. So I would say it's up to you. Be mindful that everyone reading it's going to have a different perspective on what's important. And then the idea is that we'll have a broad enough panel of judges that will come to consensus across varying opinions. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
These have all been great. Any other last questions? Okay, well, I just want to remind everybody here is Ben, if you need to get a hold of us, use me as the primary. You can also just email info@mediascholars.org. That also gets to me. But we are available if you have other questions as you dig into things and have some things that you didn't think of today. But we really are excited to have this huge class of competitors, talented competitors. We're excited to hear more about your thoughts and creativity. And I know some of you are probably getting ready to head off on spring break or definitely midterms. So we wish you good luck in those areas. Be safe, everybody. And we will hear from you in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much for coming out today.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.